Welcome to Aging on the Suncoast. I'm your host, Jason Martino. Hurricane season started June 1st and lasts through November 30th. While we prepare for all potential hazards, it's extremely important that we spend some time preparing for both our county's biggest threat, a hurricane. In 2017, both Pinellas and Pasco dodged the massive Hurricane Irma. A shift to our east allowed our area to only experience tropical force winds and rain. Then in 2018, Florida was struck by the incredible force of Hurricane Michael. This hurricane ravaged the Panhandle, with recovery efforts still occurring today. Because of our local luck, we can never let complacency get in the way of planning. This is especially true for the senior population that resides in either Pasco or Pinellas counties. While many in our everyday community are vulnerable, seniors are far more vulnerable after a disaster such as a hurricane. To assist our viewers take planning seriously, we've invited Kathy Perkins, the Director of Emergency Management with Pinellas County Emergency Management, and Laura Wilcoxon, the Assistant Director with the Pasco County Division of Emergency Management. Today, our guests will help shed light on important senior preparedness information. Kathy, welcome to Aging on the Suncoast.
Thank you.
So glad that you can make it. And Laura, welcome back to Aging on the Suncoast.
Thank you for having me.
So I said it a little bit in the monologue. I talked about Irma that came our way in such a big storm. It came right up the middle of the state. It did a little bit of a wobble, and then it potentially threatened Pinellas and Pasco County at one point, and then it went east of us, which is always the best side for us to be on the storm. And so we lucked out. We had power outages like we were talking about earlier. We had an immense amount of rain, but the damage that we experienced was far less than what it could have been. And then in 2018, we got lucky once again, and we had Michael. Michael went up to Bay County, up in the Panhandle, and just ripped that place apart. And so we learned a lot of lessons. I know you two, as seasoned people in emergency management, are using some of those lessons so you can apply it locally. But one of the things that we took away from that is, because we haven't had a direct hit since like the 1920s or something like that, thank God for the Indian mounds that they're helping us, per se, is that we deal with a lot of folks that are complacent. And we also have a pretty big population of seniors and all ages really that are transient, that come to our area for a long, long time. So a lot of what we're going to talk about today is going to be planning and where people can take that seriously and where they can get started. So Kathy, I'm going to start with you. Where does a senior really begin to think about preparedness?
So there's three things that we really recommend everybody do. The first thing they need to know is they need to know their risk. So are they in an evacuation zone? Are they in a flood zone? Are they in a mobile home and they might have to evacuate? The second thing that we tell everybody is they need to make a plan. So once you know what your risk is, you need to determine, can you shelter in place or do you need to evacuate? And then the third thing is you need to stay informed. So how do you get information about a storm that is coming? And then as a storm is evolving, what are the steps that you need to be taking?
I like those three. There's the hot three on there. Evacuation zones, and there's evacuation levels. We heard that terminology as well. Laura, what is an evacuation zone?
An evacuation zone is based off of potential storm surge that could come in or flooding hazard. It also takes into wind consideration. For Pasco County, we put our mobile homes are in an evacuation zone A due to the wind potential of damage. The other zones that you see on our evacuation zone map are all about what kind of storm surge we could see or how far the Gulf of Mexico can actually be pushed in to the county. So it's very important that you know what your risk is, as Kathy was saying, is the first part is, do you live in an evacuation zone or do you live in a home or a structure that might be historic or built 50 years earlier, or in a mobile home that could be at risk for having substantial damage from wind.
Yeah, and Kathy, does Pinellas County see the same definition of evacuation zone as Pasco County does?
Absolutely. So we're going to run from the water and we're going to hide from the wind. Everybody's going to feel the impacts of the winds. For mobile home and electric dependent, that means we need to get you out of harm's way regardless of how big the storm is. But that storm surge is the #1 killer, so we want to make sure that we're evacuating those people out of harm's way.
You're so right. So let's talk about how one finds out what evacuation zone that they're in. Kathy, you want to roll with that?
So there's lots of different ways that people can find out this information. They can look it up online. They can go to Pinellas County Know Your Zone, and I'm sure Pasco County has a similar lookup feature. We can also have our hurricane guide, and we have a Ready Pinellas app where you can actually put in your address and look it up, and I believe Pasco County has a similar.
Pasco County is very similar. We have the My Pasco app. If we had residents that already had the My Pasco app, it's been updated. So they need to delete that original app and upload the new one. And that's going to be an area that they can also register for the Alert Pasco, which is where they can get messages sent directly to their phone using that app.
Cool.
Yeah.
And
Through the Ready Pinellas, you can sign up for Alert Pinellas. And we also have hard copy guides that people can get from government offices and libraries.
Pasco County, we've just produced a brand new guide talking about knowing what your hazards are. This is a new comprehensive guide. So we go through all the different types of hazards that Pasco County has, and then we go into what to do before, during, and after a storm on how you can recover.
Yeah, your guides are really good for both Pasco and Pinellas County. We're going to talk about them a little bit more in depth on the second half of the show, and then definitely the 21st century technology that you all have to kind of help people stay informed, and then also understand where their risk is at. And I just lost my train of thought. Going back to evacuation levels, we have good technology, 21st century technology. We also have guides where you can pull it up, but we have a good amount of seniors out there that sometimes may not be computer proficient, or they may not be able to take a look at the map and kind of pinpoint where their house is on there. Do you all still offer, I'll call it old school technology, where they can actually call and talk to a live person and maybe give them your address?
Yeah, call our main office and we'll be happy to look your address up for you and tell you whether or not you're in an evacuation zone.
You can call emergency management or the county customer service information, and they can look it up for you as well.
Okay, cool. As an employee with the Area Agency on Aging, much of our mission is making sure that we provide programs and services to seniors so they can remain at home as long as possible. That doesn't mean that we disparage against the use of a skilled nursing facility or assisted living facility. We know that there's a need there. So we know that we have a ton of older adults that live within the community and they're able to remain independent. And then we have a ton of older adults that live in skilled and assisted living facilities. Much like you, and I'm going to go back to that word that you used before with the being informed and all that. Much of those folks that are living in assisted living facilities and skilled nursing facilities, they have it's hard for them to become informed. So in my opinion, it's pretty important for them to stay informed about what that facility's plan is. Is that a true statement?
Absolutely. So if you have a loved one that's living in one of these facilities, or you yourself live in that facility, you really need to find out what that emergency plan is and communicate that with your loved ones. It could be that the facility evacuates and goes to another location. And we've seen a lot after storms where family members from other parts of the country are now trying to find their loved ones. So they may have relocated. It's important to know, too, if you live in an evacuation zone in one of our counties, can you and your family go and stay with your loved one at that facility? So it's really good to find out what their plans are.
So, and Pasco County has actually passed a new ordinance in light of what we saw during Hurricane Irma, where we now require our facilities that are going for licensure to have a plan on if they have to evacuate outside of the region. So if we have a complete regional evacuation, that facility knows where they would go elsewhere. So talking to them and knowing what that plan is and where your loved one will go, it's very crucial.
It is crucial, and it's and communication is key. A lot of times when I'm speaking to large groups of seniors that live in congregate facilities, and I talk about that communication, I beat the same drum that you do. It's so much more worthwhile to talk to your family about what your plans are pre and post, because a lot of what they're hearing, if they live up in Massachusetts or Connecticut or somewhere over there, they're seeing what the Weather Channel is purporting to them, and that's full of fear. And so they just don't know. So that communication is essential. So I'm going to put myself as an example. I'm a 77-year-old gentleman. I'm living alone. My house, which is a block house, happens to be in a non-evacuation zone. What are some of the things that I should be thinking about when it comes to preparedness? Laura?
You want to make sure that you're communicating what your plan is, that you are going to be staying at home. So if it's a community such as a mobile home park, a lot of times the front office would have that information on, we are outside of that wind zone area, we're not being called on that. I know that's a little bit contradictory to what I was saying with the evacuation zone A and stuff, but we do have some areas with later building technology that have been higher wind rated. It's more about that information and communicating with your families, with the people that organize your complex, and getting what your plan is to stay there. Then it's also making sure that you have a kit. Yeah. A lot of our disaster guides have a kit that can help you stay prepared. You probably heard in the past that it was prepare for up to 72 hours. Now the region, with what we saw during Hurricane Irma and especially with Michael, we're now saying be prepared for 7 days, and making sure that you have enough food and water, non-perishable food. Make sure you have a can opener that you can also use. So I know that there's a wide variety. If you have problems with grip or things like that, make sure that it's one that you can actually use to open up the non-perishable food.
Yeah. If you're going to be sheltering in place in your home, you have to protect it from the wind. So you want to make sure that you have protection on all of your openings, your doors and your windows, whether it's plywood or approved shutters or Rolladin shutters or whatever you can have to help protect your home. Identify a safe room within your home. So heaven forbid, if the storm really starts to get bad and your home does start to receive damages, you have a place to go within your home.
Yeah, and if you have that means and you have that the know-how to do that mitigation to your home, definitely take a look at that.
Yeah.
Some of that costs money, and a lot of our folks that are living here, they don't have a robust banking account. But there's a lot of little things that they can do to kind of fortify their home. Do you also think it may be a best practice for myself living alone and being advanced in age that if I have friends or family in a non-evac that I may want to stay with them?
Absolutely. We've started to change the terminology. You know, Florida used to be looked at as a peninsula and everybody had to evacuate north and get out of the state. With what we've been seeing through these other storms, it's now evacuate maybe 10 miles and you don't have to go as far. Just what we said, run from the water, hide from the wind.
Yeah.
And if you're in a non-evac, you could even invite other people to your house to stay with you. You could be a host home.
Yep.
So there's lots of opportunities for us to help ensure that our neighbors and friends are safe.
Such a neat philosophy having the host home, you know, either strangers taking in some other strangers and then just protecting them, and or if they're a friend and being that host home in that as well. Now fast forward a little bit, I'm a 77-year-old man, I'm living by myself. My house is in a level A. Well, so obviously that's something that because I planned, that's something that I need to be worried about on there. What types of things do I need to be thinking about if I live in that evacuation zone?
So do you have friends or family that live in a non-evacuation zone that you can go to? You're still going to want to have a go kit. You want to have some supplies with you. And if you have a pet, you want to make sure you've got that. If you have medications, you want to make sure that you've got enough medications for while you evacuate. And you want to make sure that, again, you secure your home as much as possible. So that way, hopefully, you can come back after the storm when conditions are safe.
Yeah. And if I don't feel safe, and I feel that I want to go somewhere I don't have friends or family in there, there's general population shelters that may be advantageous for me. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
And we also offer free transportation. So if you need transportation assistance, we can do that through PSTA. I'm sure
And
Pasco has a
Pasco
similar.
County offers the same thing. So if we're calling for an evacuation, our transportation systems will be free to get you to a safe shelter.
That's pretty awesome. You guys are really putting a lot of resources out there to help people out on that. People have to take advantage of this stuff, right?
Yes.
So different than a general population shelter, which I think the news provides a lot of good information on. We have what we call a special needs shelter. Kathy, would you tell us a little bit about what a special needs shelter is?
So special needs shelters are designed to help people that perhaps need assistance with activities of daily living or need assistance with higher level of care. They're supported by the Department of Health. We also have backup generation in them, so that way if we have people that are oxygen concentrators, we can support that during the storm. But it's very important that these people register in advance, especially if they need transportation assistance, so that way we can make sure we can have the resources and coordinate everything in advance of the storm.
Yeah, as Kathy was saying, you know, registering is a very good tool for the county to help us plan to be able to take care of your needs. But it's very important for our citizens to understand that just because you have done a registration, it does not mean that it's a reservation. There is not a specific spot for you at any specified shelter. It is more just a planning tool for the county to ensure that we can care for you and help you out in an emergency.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think it's important to reflect on what occurred during Irma as well. I mean, I work closely with both of your agencies, and the registration process happening at the 11th hour is not a help to anybody.
Yeah.
So taking the lead and looking at it earlier, and especially if you're a senior and you're vulnerable, you go through a lot of significant changes. And that may also affect the triage process for what's going to be the most appropriate place to put you out to, right?
Yeah. People need to look at, if they're getting assistance on a daily basis, they really need to think about that during a hurricane or during a storm. Those services will most likely be interrupted. So even if you're getting Meals on Wheels or you have home health care coming into your home, talk with those providers, find out how they're going to be able to provide services to you before, during, and after the storm. So that way you can be prepared. And if you can't be supported at home, you know, perhaps you need to look at going to friends or family or going to a shelter.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That first half seemed to fly right by, and we're going to come back and we're going to finish off special needs. We're going to talk about pets a little bit, and we're going to take a little bit deeper dive into more preparedness ideas. Please stay with us while we take a short break. As usual, don't forget to have a pen or pencil ready. During the break and at the end of our show, we'll be highlighting important information covering both Pasco and Pinellas County's disaster preparation resources. When we come back, we'll explore more senior preparedness ideas.
Many of us don't want to believe that elder abuse, neglect, or exploitation can happen to a family member, a friend, or even ourselves. Elder abuse is a growing problem and is severely underreported. Many victims are reluctant to report due to fear, embarrassment, shame, or guilt. In order to prevent elder abuse, we must take action. Don't be afraid to talk about the issue and report it to the Florida Abuse Hotline at 1-800-962-2873. Together, we can make a difference.
Welcome back to Aging on the Suncoast. During the first half of the show, Kathy Perkins and Laura Wilcoxon helped us understand senior disaster preparation and sheltering options. So let's continue this conversation and talk about other ways we can prepare. Kathy, welcome back to the second half of our show.
Thank you.
And Laura, welcome back to the second half
Thank you.
too. Where we left off on the first half of the show, we were kind of wrapping up what a special needs shelter is. We were promoting the importance of registering as early as possible. And then we also talked about the types of kits that one would either have when if they're staying home and or if they're getting ready to go to a shelter, whether it be a general population one and or a special needs shelter. We have a wealth of people within Pinellas and Pasco counties that are still living within the community. Some of the things that they need to remain independent in the community is different things like you brought up, Kathy, maybe a home delivered meal to keep them independent. And a lot of times we have folks that are receiving home health care, some help around the home with some of the daily cleaning, help with their activities of daily living, like you said, and sometimes some personal care. And so I'm going to go back to our talk about the assisted living facility and the skilled nursing facility and understanding those types of institutions' plans. Is that still important to understand what your home health care provider has planned?
Absolutely. It's all about communicating now while it's blue skies out, and finding out what they plan to do. Maybe they have to stop their service while the hurricane is right here, or maybe they have to evacuate their employees and you have to come up with alternate arrangements. So having those conversations up front to where you can make the plans prior to having to need them would definitely help you out. And if they do plan on evacuating, talk to your doctor. They might have some other resources that can help you during that kind of time of need.
All right.
Yeah. And we would highly encourage the home health care aides to come with the clients, help them out during the storm.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you thought that would be a benefit, that if obviously they have to have some sort of continuity of care because the folks in the shelter can't do it all of the time. So that would be a question that I might have, or if I was curious about my mom's services, finding out when and how some of the home health aides would be able to continue to provide that care. Medications. Medications are pretty big. I read a statistic not too long ago that I believe that the average older adult takes anywhere between 5 and 6 different types of medications on a daily basis. So, in my opinion, it's pretty critical to have that during that.
Yes.
Let's talk about what you know about medications and what seniors.
Definitely something you want to bring with you to the shelter. Especially our special needs shelter, we will not be able to have medication for everybody, so having that plan in place is important. You can talk to your pharmacy, start off, get a list of what you're taking. There's laws in place right now that if we are having evacuation, that you can get extra prescriptions filled, even if it's not your time to have them filled. Talking to your doctor to find out if the power's out and you have medication that need to be refrigerated, is there something else that you would be able to take during that kind of time? So it's, again, that pre-planning and making sure you have quantities on hand. Some medications can get filled for like the 90-day prescription, and that way you have a little bit to get you through the hurricane season, but you need to make sure that you're filling in front of it to have that supply on hand.
Yeah, and I'm glad we're talking about that. And you raised a good point about the differences between taking a pill or a tablet or a capsule versus having refrigerated types of information. So regardless if they're staying at home or they're going to a general population shelter or a special needs shelter, they have to factor all that into it, correct?
Correct.
Absolutely.
The emergency prescription refill rule. There's, if I remember, is like 3 to 4 different tenets of when that actually kicks in. Does anyone remember what those are?
I believe those are the governor's state declaration of emergency. Right. So that way we can make sure that anybody across the state, depending on where the storm goes, can get those refills done.
Yeah, and it's as simple as them going to their pharmacist. They already have a list of what's there. Right. The pharmacist obviously should have that as well. And it suspends the payment for an insurance company until the smoke clears, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so they're going to need that. We hope they utilize that. And if you're watching the show, talk to your pharmacist now about how that works so you can have a good understanding of what to do. Special needs shelters, we covered that in great detail. And one of the things that we didn't cover during that time is a lot of times our folks, general pop or even special needs, they have pets. And pets are like their children. We've heard some pretty disastrous situations of some of the older folks that live up in Bay County that they chose not to leave because there wasn't an accommodation that they thought for their pet. How do we approach pet preparedness in Pasco and Pinellas County?
Same way that you'd be preparing your family. Prepare for your pets. Make sure you have food and water for them, their vaccination records. Have a photo of your pet so that way you can always show everybody that this is my pet. Our special needs shelters are also pet friendly for Pasco.
Yeah, in our special needs shelters, you can bring your pet and then we'll have it transported to our animal services so that way they can take care of the pet during the storm.
Yeah, and that seems to be pretty important. I don't think that some of these folks that live within the community, and let's say they have to go to a shelter, they want somebody else, any Tom, Dick, and Harry just walking their pet and doing that. They'd rather be part of that care. Yeah. So having that animal pretty close by is would be helpful, right?
Right.
Yeah. And is there a registration process? Do they need to think about that in addition to putting together a pet kit?
Our special needs registry has a place that you can check that you have a pet. But as far as going to the pet friendly, no, we don't. Pasco does not have the registration for a pet. Okay. You just need to be able to bring your pet's vaccination records with you to the shelter, as well as a way to keep your pet, whether it's a leash or a crate or other method of confinement.
Yeah. Okay, so but somebody can help them understand some of those little
Absolutely.
things, right?
Yep. And Pinellas is the same. So if you have special needs, you can just indicate on the form that you have a pet. So that way we can make arrangements with animal services to help take care of it. And for the animal friendly shelters, they can just show up. There's actually a registration form they can download in advance just to help them processing once they get to the door.
That's awesome. You guys are really making it easy for people to start thinking through some things. You put out some good information on your websites. I use it all the time. I'm constantly sending the links out to people so they can go there and they can see the plethora of information you offer. And then you all have, you've touched base on the hurricane guides that you have developed and you put out into that community. We had a little talk during the break of where they were, and you guys said, where do you keep your hurricane guides?
Government offices and libraries. A lot of our jurisdiction municipalities that we work with also have them available as well.
Okay, so if I were to walk in Pinellas County Human Services, I can probably ask for one, or I can probably notice on the table.
Yeah, you'll see them in the front lobby of many of our county buildings.
Okay, awesome.
Same with Pasco. We have them at all of our libraries and our main government buildings.
Yeah. Let's rattle through a little bit more about what's in that guide. And I know that Pasco has their own proprietary one. Pinellas has that. It's obviously going to be pertinent to the individual counties, and our counties are so different in many ways, but also pretty similar. Tell us what's involved in that hurricane guide.
So that hurricane guide will walk you through kind of the before, during, and after. So how do you know your risk? Where can you go to find out if you're in an evacuation zone? What are the types of things that you need to have in your plan if you're going to evacuate, where you're going to go, where our shelters are located? And then it also talks about after the storm. That's something that a lot of people don't think about. So we want people to understand the power outages, some of the damages that may occur, that we need them to stay put immediately after the storm, so we can get our first responders out there to start clearing the roads and make sure that the bridges are safe for people to get back home. So we really want to have all that information in people's hands long before so they can prepare for it.
Yeah, what a cool guide, especially talk about the recovery piece of that as well. Laura, same thing?
Yeah, Pasco, we're so proud of our new guide because we really get into more hazards than just hurricanes. I know that's what we're talking about, but it's all about knowing what your risk is. A lot of thought went into making it as user-friendly as possible. So when we talk about evacuation zones, the guide was designed where your evacuation zone map is right in the middle, and that's where it's bound. So when you first flip it open, if you get right to the middle, then you can find out where your zone is. And then we also talk about what to do before, during, and after an evacuation. And then if you decide to just close the book and flip it over, then you have all your contact information right there on the back to make it super simple.
What a cool tool. And they should just pick one up and bring it home, do some light reading, and then just use it as a reference guide, right?
Yeah, put it in your hurricane kit so that way you've got it and you can pull it out as the storm is approaching and refresh and make sure you've got everything ready.
Good deal. I have one in my kit too. So. Let's talk about initiatives. And I know there's a beauty in the similarities of our counties, and there's also beauty in the differences. So Pinellas County has a lot of barrier islands. Bel Air, Clearwater, St. Pete Beach, and all those too. if a storm comes and then it leaves and they want somewhere else and they want to get back to their home, how do they do that easily?
So we have a re-entry tag program that's run through the sheriff's office, so people can sign up online and they can get that. It helps us expedite knowing who is authorized to come back to the barrier islands. Again, we want people to wait until we have an opportunity to get those bridges checked, get emergency services back in place. But once we've got the all clear for people to come back, then that re-entry program will help them get across the bridges quicker.
Awesome. And then also in the 21st century, I know on the website at least, you have an application on there that can show a homeowner what it looks like for water intrusion during different levels. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So one of the things I know when I was looking for a house here in Pinellas County, I wanted to know, am I in a storm surge zone and how much surge could I be talking about? So I would know how to protect my home or if I did have to evacuate. So it's a great tool for people to visualize what, 10 feet, 20 feet of storm surge looks like in relation to where you live.
Yeah. And Laura, we're in it's 2019 now. We're alerting anyone we possibly can. Tell us about your alert and your notification system.
So Alert Pasco is a wonderful tool that you can register. It's where we can get information to you anywhere that your phone would work. It's with social media. If you go on and download our My Pasco app, or even go to our website, or you can even call in our customer service numbers. 3 ways that we make it super easy and friendly for you to register. We put in the information that you would like us to have on your best method that we can contact you on. And if we know that there's any kind of hazard or we need to get important information such as where our shelters would be open, if we're evacuating an area, or that we're open and the roads are free and clear, we'll go ahead and send out those messages and you'll get notified how you decide.
All real time too.
All real time.
That's awesome. And you have an app.
Alert Pinellas, same system. You can sign up for multiple locations, so work locations, home locations. Even somebody that's outside of the county, if they want to know what's happening with a loved one in their area here, they can sign up for it as well.
That's pretty good. And everything is mobile now. Most of us have mobile phones. I think the idea of seniors not being proficient in how to use mobile phones is starting to go away. There's a lot of agencies that help people understand how to use tablets and how to use their phones, and these apps are a tremendous resource for us. Any last thoughts on preparedness in the time that we're here? We have about 10 seconds or so.
Don't be overwhelmed. Take it step by step. If you can't put together a full kit at the beginning of the season, every time you see a special or a sale at the store, pick up a few supplies. Make sure you've got those non-perishables, those waters. If you need assistance, reach out to our office and we'll be happy to give guidance.
Yeah, and approach it with reason. I think that's what we're doing. Kathy, thanks so much for coming on our show and offering all the good information that you did. Laura, welcome back to our show, and thanks for coming to see us again and talking about all the cool things that Pasco
My pleasure.
has.
Thank you, Jason.
No problem. We hope you learned a great deal from this month's broadcast. We also hope this episode helped you take this hurricane season as serious as you should. At the end of the show, we'll show you some neat resources available to you, so get your pencil ready. We'll see you next month, and until then, please stay safe and utilize all the resources these 2 emergency management offices have offered you.
Many of us don't want to believe that elder abuse, neglect, or exploitation can happen to a family member, a friend, or even ourselves. Elder abuse is a growing problem and is severely underreported. Many victims are reluctant to report due to fear, embarrassment, shame, or guilt. In order to prevent elder abuse, we must take action. Don't be afraid to talk about the issue and report it to the Florida Abuse Hotline at 1-800-962-2873. Together, we can make a difference.